And I've never actually shared my screen before, but I have a PowerPoint. So
yeah,
most disabled
should be able to allow you to do that.
It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Hold on, I gotta.
You will probably have to unlock it.
Yeah. Let's see.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure you did make it in, Jenny.
I did.
Yeah, you can do it without popping it out.
I figured that out. I had to click on the name, not the meeting code.
Yeah, we did it through the name. That way there was no link that was visible and clickable. We were trying really hard to appease certain people so that we didn't have to do a formal pre-reg.
Right. So the TDFI, no, how do they call it? TDFT? Frog calls it too dumb for technology. So you've got to make it hyper user friendly.
Yeah.
It's all good. I figured it out, and I see I can share my screen when it's time, so we are good.
Perfect.
Yay!
Good morning, Your Excellency. How are you?
I'm so well. How are you, good lady?
Oh, good.
Thank you so much for all your hard work on this. You and Frosty, I've seen y'all's stuff all over, and I think this is fantastic. I think we're going to get a lot out of this, and I think it'll set a standard for us being able to do this sort of thing in the future in conjunction with live events once we start doing that as well. I think that enough of us in the barony have access to projectors and stuff. We'll be able to do some neat stuff and pull some people in from far away, which is very cool.
Yeah, that's been my favorite thing about this whole thing with the lockdown is the stuff I've gotten to do around the world and the friends I've made around the world. Yeah, I was actually getting picked on that I may have more friends and contacts from around the world than I do in the northern part of the kingdom now.
That might be true.
And my peers were slightly harassing me about that, but that's their job, so.
I've just really enjoyed the ability to feel closer to those around me. I'm an extroverted extrovert, so
right.
Isolation is not fun for me. It's not fun. And I'm a hugger, and Granya's the opposite. And I'm a hugger, and I want to see people, and I want to touch them, and I want to talk to them. And Lord have mercy. I think literally the Zoom thing and different virtual realities have just made it a little more bearable.
For sure.
So I'm only slightly extroverted, right?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Good luck, honey. Bye.
Bye, Frog.
He is off doing what he loves most right now. He is going to fish the Pecos.
Fantastic. Nice. Got a camping trip in the Pecos planned later this year. It'll be good.
I almost can't do regular camping anymore. It's so boring. It's so boring. I don't care if I'm hiking or doing something crazy. It's just not as fun.
Last summer,
It has ruined me.
I went on a mundane camping trip with my friend who is also a hammocker. And he had some new gear he wanted to test out. So, okay. I had to force myself to just sit in my camp chair and relax. It was really hard.
It is really hard.
I think
we went up in the Jemez, and the site we found was amazing, but part of it was covered in trash, so I was itching to go clean the site. And he was yelling at me because I was supposed to be relaxing. So I forced myself to relax, and then on the way out, I picked up trash.
We just can't do it 100%. We can stretch ourselves.
I think we've gotten very used to packing schedules, but as is the case, I tend to collect a lot of information from people as I travel, and I think we have an opportunity coming back from this situation to evaluate how we schedule things. I think sometimes we overdo it. Battlemore is a great example.
Mhm.
Grand Outlandish can be. I've been to ones that weren't super packed with stuff, and then I've been to ones that were, you know, the Baron and Baroness couldn't get to everything. It was so packed. So it's
Well, and that people will, when you're planning an event and it's like, well, we need to have this for these people and this for these people and this for these people. Well, yeah, but what if you have somebody who wants to do all three? I mean, we need to focus on something.
yeah.
I think one of the neatest things that we can do in this coming back, I think some of our first reopening events should simply be socializing.
I think you're right. I think that that's probably going to be the case.
Doesn't need to be tournaments. It doesn't need to be competitions. It doesn't need to be classes where one person gets to talk and the other 19 are just itching to have a visit. I think we should have like a 3-day event that you're only allowed to sign up for one day. And that way we stretch out who's at which part of it so we have the right number in the meeting gathering. And then it's 100% just socialization.
Yeah.
And
bring picnics.
bring picnics.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So we need some midwinter-esque events, but feed yourself.
Basically, yeah.
Because I think that's what most of us do at midwinter is we hang out, we dance if Mistress is doing dancing, but we hang out, we talk, we mingle.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
And there's very little pressure to do anything at midwinter other than be.
And I feel that that is incredibly necessary for the very beginning of this opening back up. That's just in my soul.
Yeah. We've been looking at talking to the different officers about, what do the new guidelines mean? What are our options, that sort of thing. And I think that at least here in this county initially, if we don't get to green before June 1, honestly, online is going to be our better bet anyway, unless you can get together with a small subset of like maybe a guild or your household.
My household's too big.
Right. Yeah, exactly. If we can get to green level, that would be reasonable. A 10-person activity it could be reasonable. Turquoise is where we really want to be, though, honestly, because
it is.
Santa Fe County and Socorro are already there. And I already reached out to Sir Thomas up in Santa Fe, and I had Batu Mongo, because he's pretty tight with the Goliards, reached out, and I said, hey, you guys are going to be the ones that are probably going to be able to host something of any real size initially. Yeah. And whether that be a fighter practice, an archery situation. And we had a meeting with their majesties, and they straight up said, as far as like martial activities go, archery is probably going to be archery and thrown weapons are probably going to be the first thing they get approved, because they're the easiest to social distance. And,
right.
But I agree with you, Raelena. I think that eventually, once we get more of a plan going, being able to just reacquaint ourselves with everybody will be
absolutely delightful. Well, it looks like we got another one coming in, and yay.
So I just have to do whenever you're ready, because we are at 9:05.
Right.
I've just got a little speech I got to read.
Yep. No, I was wondering if you would go ahead and do that when we hit. Yeah, it's 9:05, and kind of let them get in, whoever this is, because I don't recognize that name.
I don't either, but they're muted. Tyranny? Is that Slane?
They just put their mute on, so I wonder if they're not going to.
It's okay.
Yeah, welcome. So I'll go ahead and do the little speech, and then
that sounds like a plan.
Lady Raelena. So, welcome everyone to the Spring Collegium. Remember, this is an online event, so we would appreciate the online etiquette, as is pretty common these days. Make sure that you are muted unless speaking, and use the raise hand function in order to ask questions. Remember, well, I'm going to have the instructor spotlighted, and she's going to be sharing her screen. At certain points throughout this particular class, we've talked ahead of time, and there's going to be sort of a discussion portion. So unmuting yourself for that would be completely appropriate, but just try not to speak over each other. And also a reminder that this class is being recorded for posterity, so we can share it later. By staying on, you are giving permission to be recorded. If you unmute to ask any questions or have your video running. If you do not wish to be a part of the recording, leave your video and mic off and use the chat for questions and comments. I'm your chat host, Sir Roland DeGray. I will be monitoring the chat. If you are one of those who doesn't want to speak, just indicate that in there, and I will be your voice for you, and we'll make sure that your questions get asked so that our lovely instructor will answer them. With that being said, Lady Raelena, the show is yours.
Thank you so much. And I'm really, really excited to bring this class to you. I want it to not seem like I'm the smartest person in the room, because I typically am not. But it is something that I am very passionate about: kindness and courtesies and the giving and receiving of those. So I'm going to open with my screen sharing. And so we can get right on into this. Are you seeing the slides on the side as well as the big one? I thought so. I got to figure out where to do. There we go. That's what I wanted. All right. So this is the giving and receiving of courtesies. And it's a roundtable discussion. So yes, you are mostly muted, but at any point in time, you can make a comment. As he said, use the raise your hand function, or mention it in chat, and he will make sure I know of this. Please mute yourself. You've actually already gone over these. This is funny. When and if a disagreement arises, please remember to season your words with kindness and honor. And if you have a preferred pronoun, please make it known to me so that I don't accidentally offend. I am quite old school, trying to learn to be sensitive to those needs. And so I would like to make sure I don't offend anyone. So the definition of courtesy is that it's an excellence of social conduct, such as polite manners shown, respectful and considered acts of expressions. So it's really a very almost convoluted definition, because there are so many aspects to what courtesies are. But it can really be basically wrapped up in manners and kindness and how you're behaving. At this point, I'd like you guys to share some thoughts. So if you unmute, just make sure that you take turns politely. We don't have that many in the class right now, so you're welcome to just go ahead and unmute. What are some modern or mundane courtesies that we practice today?
Please and thank you is something that we were taught and we teach our young, and is something we're brought up in. Also, being brought up as a Southern girl, sir, ma'am, and miss. Everybody is addressed with sir, ma'am, and miss, unless or until you are given permission to not.
Right. Anything else? I often, because in my mundane life, I'm a daycare teacher and teach 3-year-olds, I try to focus on those kind of things to start early and learn. And I like to, one of the things about my classroom is that we have class jobs, and most of our class jobs have to do with courtesies. I have a door holder who makes sure that nobody gets their fingers smashed in the door. And they also make sure that nobody is forgotten or left behind. I have jobs like comfort keeper. They're the ones who use empathy to observe when you're upset and help you feel better. You know, these little kind of kindnesses and And courtesies, I like to teach from the beginning because I really feel like they're very foundational to who we are as humans. And it's one of the things that attracted me to the society was that the society, the SCA itself, promoted courtesy and kindness, and it promoted responsibility and respect, which was huge to me. So it was really exciting to see that in our modern world. Can you think of any medieval times specific courtesies that we practice in the SCA? I have a couple pictures here that are kind of silly, kind of fun. Sir Walter Raleigh, even though they've debunked the fact that he did this, there's a myth that he would lay his cloak over a puddle so that the queen's feet would not get wet. Basically, he's just simply showing a kindness to her property, her clothing, her shoes. He's showing a kindness to her, a kind of a self-sacrificing kindness. And then there's a cute picture here from Princess Bride where the dread pirate Roberts is protecting her, and he's protecting and shielding her from the would-be bad guys. And so it's not meant to be gender specific, but I believe in medieval times it kind of was, because women were viewed as the weaker sex, but they were not in essence weaker. They were different, and that difference helped formulate the medieval idea of taking care of someone. You guys have any other courtesies that we practice in society?
The honor that all fighters pay on the field before tourneys to the crown and their consorts and each other, because you also honor the one you're fighting.
Absolutely.
That's a big one we use.
Valerie?
Assisting with camp setup, especially with towards the royals and
Absolutely. Bowing, standing when the king comes in, standing when the queen comes in.
courtesying to the crowns themselves. You don't have to have the king and queen there to pay respect.
Absolutely. We actually have honor and regard for the thrones themselves. That was one of the hardest ones for me to learn, because if he's not there, I don't got to worry about the chair. But I had to learn to do that because it's about the position and it's about honoring and respecting it even then. Absolutely.
Here's one that's not often considered, but I think folks can certainly relate. And sometimes it's got to be corrected a little bit. We generally don't sit down around a queen that is standing, unless
I think it's very forgotten.
I'm going to tattle on the order of chivalry a little bit, but that happens every once in a while where, we form our circle for discussion, and then somebody will invariably, maybe perhaps a newer member will forget themselves and plop their butts down on the chair before the queen gets a chance to sit, and we all give them the side eye.
Right? And literally, one of the things that I wanted to point out, one of the things that also, again, drew me to the society was the way that people cared for one another. So first few years that we played, I hardly ever carried a basket. I would have it in my hands and someone would take it and would carry it for me. And so a lot of those courtesies that were offered was a very drawing point for me, because I felt like sometimes before the SCA, I was screaming and searching for kindness in a world that had forgotten how to do it. And even to the point that there were times in my world where kindnesses were rebuked. We're told, don't do that, you're gonna get in trouble for that. Don't do that, you'll get taken. Don't do that, it will never come back good. And I was sad for that, because I really love the idea of people taking care of one another. I love the idea of kindness and generosity and honor and chivalry, and oh my goodness, all those things get my blood boiling now, make it all happy, because it's really truly something that drew me in. The distinct parts of any courteous act are very simple, and yet they're very complex. One person gives an act of courtesy and another person receives that act of courtesy. You can't really have a giver without a receiver, because it just falls dead. If I hand Grania a gift and she doesn't put her arms out and accept it, that gift will fall on the floor. And at the same time, if she's holding out to get a gift and I just walk past her and ignore her, that gift has fallen dead yet again, because there wasn't the relationship of the giver and the sharer and the taker. And so it has to happen together, in sync and in commonality. So how can we make that happen? Well, the problem is courtesies can often be misinterpreted. It is really hard if you are inundated on your day-to-day life with mundane atrocities to see and find the courtesies. Sometimes our mundane mindset, we have it in the back of our brain while we're unloading at camp or while we're unloading at midwinter, and I'll just do it myself. I don't need help. I'll just do it myself. And we allow that mundane mindset to invade our current middle ages, our fun times. And I think we can either do that on our own or it can be done against us. Sometimes it's one or the other. And as much as I love, well, let me save that for later. A past offense that distorts your view of the courtesy offered. I think this happens rather frequently, and this is going to speak mainly to, this speaks mainly to feminists, because there's nothing wrong with being a feminist. I want everyone to know that. I love the idea of people who want their own and hold their own. But in the mundane world, women who have fought and struggled to be recognized for their value sometimes can misinterpret a courtesy that's offered as a sign that they are weaker. And that is completely not how it is usually given. A courtesy is typically given from an open heart that says, I want to share this with you, or I want to share this burden for you, or may I help you because you're such a nice friend and I really like you. But I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but there were a couple older ladies who, in my beginning life in the SCA, they had a very harsh habit of resisting courtesy and chivalry from gentlemen that were knights or just regular gentlemen and lords in the society. And what I found was that they would be called up into court and they would like swat away the hand of anyone who tried to help them walk up. And I really don't think they had any malicious intent. I don't think they were rude or obnoxious. I think they had just misunderstood what was being offered. And they misunderstood the idea that sometimes a man takes care of a woman specifically because he values her, not because he thinks she can't do it herself. And so sometimes we've really got to be cautious to keep in the mindset and keep the ambience of the game where it was intended. I'm talking a lot. Is there anybody who'd like to comment on that?
I think that's all very well said. I have found, being someone who came up on the path, who was very much expected to, help carry baskets or burdens, to help set up pavilions, whatever the case may be, that the surefire way to avoid miscommunication or weird awkwardness with any of this is to just ask a question. Um, you know, would you like it if I carried your basket? Uh, would you like an escort into court? Usually, that one that you mentioned about being escorted into court, that one tends to be the most awkward because there is a sense of urgency, like you need to get up there.
Right.
But the truth is that I find that anybody, male or female, or what have you, appreciates the question, right?
I do.
And I think that in and of itself is an extension of courtesy. And I think that where most people run into sort of a problem is we all have a tendency to be a little awkward, and I think we just need to normalize better communication, and I think that people will appreciate that, and if we can get to a point where we're all communicating better, there'll be less of kind of what you're referring to.
Absolutely. Grania?
I was gonna say, especially along the lines of being escorted into court. You know me. I am one of those strong, independent people, and I've had to learn a lot within the SCA, and the idea of being escorted somewhere was very weird for me.
Yes.
Until the first time I was attending a court and I saw a male be called into court, and like 4 or 5 people, I'm pretty sure they knew him, all ran over and scrambled to escort him in. And it was kind of funny, and that made it click for me that, okay, this is a thing we do in court, that you're escorted in. It's not because you're female. It's not because you're male. It's not because of anything. That's the procedure we hold during court, is when you're called in, somebody walks with you. Okay, cool. I'm down for that now. But it took me seeing that little comical moment happen way at the back for me to realize this is what it's about. It's not about them looking at me, seeing female, and thinking less.
And I think that that's a metamorphosis that has just occurred naturally in the SCA. And I remember very early on seeing something very similar and kind of getting that visual cue of, no, this is again, it's about the courtesy. It's not about making any other kind of statement. It may have been at one point in time. I mean, our organization is over 50 years old, but in the modern iteration, I don't think that that's the case any longer.
So I have an interesting thing to propose to you. I think making it gendered was a product of the 60s, not of the Middle Ages. I think making it gender specific was truly a product of the mid 20th century that we were dealing with when we began, that we had it so gendered and so specific. Because I really don't think the Middle Ages cared about that as much as we do. And I think getting back to this has helped us get back to a truer medieval experience.
I think that's an interesting hypothesis. I would like to actually suggest we might look into that at some point. Maybe we can find some references, but it stands to reason, simply because if somebody's going to be in the presence of the crown, particularly if there's any chance of that not,
going well,
there's going to be guards everywhere, and being escorted to the crown and escorted away from the crown was probably just pretty standard activity, regardless of who you were. And I imagine it depended on how paranoid the crown was, but yeah, it stands to reason. I think that that very much may be the case?
Well, like you said, it is a hypothesis because I don't have any research to back that up. But I was wondering because most of what we do was set up in the 60s and 70s. And only in the last several years have we had intense policy changing in the SCA itself, such as no bullying, such as all the regulations for with children. All of these things have come about because the standards from the 60s and 70s are just not quite cutting it anymore. And so I would love to look into that. I think that's an interesting hypothesis to try to work from. Great discussion, guys. I love this.
Well, I
Go-
think you're right. I mean, I think it was more in the Middle Ages, it was more based on rank than gender, on what courtesies were given and what.
Rank or class, absolutely. Absolutely. Because you didn't necessarily have to bow to the ragamuffin down the road. But if that baron walks through, you'd better bow to him.
Yeah.
So that's a really good point. All right, so this one is going to be some more discussion. Are there any societal courtesies that you find difficult to accept? Oh my goodness, look at that laughter in Grania's face. You can't hide your inside voice with your face. I'll just start with one of mine. I really had trouble for a long time with the gentleman escort or anyone escorting me to a porta potty. I really thought that should have been more private. I I would like hold in and not go the full extent of my body needed because I was afraid of them hearing. And this is all silly potty humor, but I wasn't focusing on the fact that I was being kept safe. I was focusing on the fact that I felt like that invaded my privacy. And that made it difficult for me. I eventually outgrew it, but my most relaxing times at the porta potty, I am not being escorted.
I would think of it as protection more as I always, when you went with somebody, you had somebody to hold your cloak or whatever piece of garb that is in the way. And you took turns because then they gave you their stuff and went in.
Which is a really good point. Although I have actually considered at several different events to putting a random table near the porta potties where I use most often, just because of that means put something down. You don't have to put it in the dirt. But you're right, to help one another. You know, it's just one of those things where having to accept the help sometimes displaces us from our comfort zone. Anybody else got examples? Go, Sir Roland.
So I think that this is something that's pretty common among folks that get the opportunity to be landed nobles or perhaps crown. Certainly I saw it a lot. Anybody who's been on a retinue sees a lot. You see, there might be a little bit of a resistance from, king or queen or a baron or baroness to being doted on all the time or helped all the time.
Yes.
And, where I think it is completely appropriate to set certain boundaries, there's certain things that, people, let's say at camp, like when we're at Australia, there's certain things that I don't really want people to touch. It's my stuff. I want to handle it, sort of thing. But I think part of being in that role is also accepting that people are really going to want to do those services to aid you because they understand that role can be stressful. And being on a retinue and providing those services is given freely and given as a courtesy. So when you take on that role, that mindset, eventually you need to let it sink in and understand that though you should never be so haughty or vain to think that you deserve it, you should allow folks to help you with the things that you are comfortable allowing them to help you with. Especially
Absolutely.
from speaking from my experience, anytime that we're setting something up that belongs to the barony, like the pavilion or something like that, absolutely. I let people handle those things. When we were at Estrella this last time, I accepted help setting up my tent. I didn't make anybody do it by themselves, but I did accept help and setting up the tent and the camp and getting everything situated. And I think that everybody's got to find their balance with that. But I certainly think that it can make people uncomfortable initially because uh, even though we are very courteous and generally help folks in the society, B&Bs and crowns get a lot of focus. And you
Yes.
might have, whereas at a normal camp trip, you might have one or two people. When you're the Baron, you might have 10 people standing there wanting to know what they need to do. So getting your mind right about that was a transition for me, but I think I've developed a nice balance.
So I have a mundane example that really helped me change my mind about that. When I was in college, my sophomore year of college, my I was sitting in the student hall, the like what is it called? It was actually called the student den because we just hang out in there, and it's connected to the bookstore. And the woman who ran the bookstore was this woman who was, Lord have mercy, if she wasn't 90, she was like 201. I mean, she was so old and the sweetest thing that could be. And I found out my first year that she had been the bookkeeper and the book lady to sell textbooks for my dad when he went to school there. And so this woman had seen a lot of stuff, and she was very old and very sweet. And Mom Crawford is how she went by. And I was in the den and I started crying because I was starting my sophomore semester. I had all my financial aid put together, wasn't very happy about these massive student loans, but I knew I was get on the right track. But I didn't have any money available to afford my textbooks for my second year. And I didn't look like I would have it until a month in, which meant I was going to miss a lot in the first beginning months of those classes, not being able to read and keep up and know all the stuff. And so I was really frustrated and I just started crying a little bit. And she walked over to help me and she says, "Oh, this is so easy to fix. I'll buy your books for you." And I was like, "No, I'm not going to let you do that. That's too much. That's too expensive." And her line to me was, "Are you seriously going to deny this old lady a chance to be a blessing?" And I was like, well, gosh, now that you put it that way, it makes me a bad guy for saying no. And I really think the valuable lesson that I took away from that was that sometimes in receiving courtesies, you allow people to practice giving courtesies that don't get a chance to do that mundanely or regularly. And they're unfamiliar with giving courtesies, and it requires someone willing to receive them to help them get the practice they need to make it a lifelong habit, to make it a goal. And so to me, part of the things that we can do to maintain a medieval mindset and yet deal with the difficulties of accepting sometimes is to realize that maybe you're in the position to train others to be good at giving courtesies. I don't know if that makes any sense or not, but that's kind of where I went with that. Grania?
So a couple of the courtesies that are difficult for me to accept that I learned pretty early on that I was okay with giving were the use of titles, how we address each other, and actually bowing and curtsying. I'm okay doing that for other people, using their titles, you know, showing them respect. When someone does it to me, it freaks me out. And it's a difficult thing. You know, I do like many people do, and if somebody addresses me as lady, I'm like, oh, that's okay, you can just call me Grania, it's fine. And I try not to look too awkward if someone comes up and bows, although I'm sure my face gives away that this is really awkward. And it's a thing, and I'm working on trying to accept that, because I can give that no problem. One of the things I've done to try and make it less awkward for me to accept is I pretty quickly decided to use the Irish alternative title. And so instead of using lady, which still freaks me out, I use Bantiarna, which is the Irish alternative for lady. And that, probably because it doesn't sound the same, I can accept that easier than I can lady. I'll still probably tell you, oh, thanks, that's okay, just call me Grania. But I have found that that makes it easier on me to use that other equivalent title.
Yeah.
So, and I've actually recommended to a couple people who are like, this just makes me uncomfortable. Well, have you checked out alternative titles? That might help, because they're not in English.
I honestly want to say that sometimes that has to do with your age. You are much younger than me, and I'm getting to the age that I am totally fine with being called ma'am and ma'am, like lady and ma'am and senora or whatever. Next year I turn 50, and I would rather see the respect than the disrespect. And I know familiarity is not disrespect, but the respect has a new place in my heart because I believe of my age and where I am in my life in general. Absolutely. So
Got a
I put
question?
on, yes.
There
Oh,
was
I'm
another
sorry.
question from Malaria.
Yes.
Oh, I had something to say, but I think it got covered. So,
Are you sure? Because we'd love to hear your view.
no, because I kind of forgot what I was going to say.
No, I totally get that. This is real, my real hair color. I am totally a blonde.
Oh yeah, no. I was just going to say, by accepting some courtesy, sometimes you get to let somebody else be the hero in their own story.
Precisely. And I mentioned an older lady who has long since passed. She had no malicious intent. She loved the gentleman in her camp, in her household, in her family, but it almost felt like she let them down sometimes by making them leave her alone. They wanted to show her honor and reverence and escort her and be the one touching her and being friendly, and I just don't know if I don't think she intended to, because she had an intense love for her people, an intense love for people. And so I just want us to be mindful that sometimes what we do is misinterpreted because of different things that are involved in our mindset. And like, for example, the last point is, what way could we alter some of the societal courtesies to make them kindness and yet agreeable to our convictions? I think we are actively doing that in the SCA, because it is no longer the norm for courtesies to be gendered. The courtesies now are, you know what, if I happen to ask Mistress Monica, can I carry that for you? And she says, why, okay, thank you for the help. At that point, it doesn't matter that we're both women. It's about a giver and a receiver. And she even, when the very first time I did this class, Mistress Monica, who I hold very high regard for, said, you've really taught me something. She said, you've really taught me something, that it is my place to be a receiver as I have gotten older, as I have gotten I want to say higher in esteem, but we do have classes and levels in the SCA. And as a peer, she felt that what I had showed her was it was her responsibility to be a receiver to train the givers. And so it absolutely can alter that by ways of making it not gender specific, by making it more acceptable to receive help. You know what? If Sir Roland is carrying my basket into Midwinter Hall, the least I can do is return the courtesy by holding the door for him.
Yes.
You know, and it's about giving and receiving. It's about making sure that we are sharing in this thing. I am going, ooh, we're going good on time. All right. Any other further comments here? You guys are so cute the way you laugh at me. All right. So what do you understand this quote to convey? Nothing is ever lost by courtesy. It is the cheapest of pleasures, costs nothing, and conveys much. It pleases him who gives and receives, and thus, like mercy, is twice blessed.
I like it. But seriously, I think it captures how simple it can be to really brighten someone else's experience through no cost to yourself. I think it shows the dynamic. I think it explains the dynamic pretty clearly. Is that, you know, this is not going to it's not going to hurt, right? It's not going to cost you anything in terms of material. It's simply to kind of refer back to what you've said before. It's about a mindset. It's about practicing a mindset that bears good fruit as a result. And if you choose to perpetuate it, um, uh, not only will the person that you give that courtesy to uh, be the better for it, but you will as well.
Yeah. Mallory, did you have some thoughts? I just saw you unmuted.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good.
I was just, yeah, I mean, it doesn't cost you anything to be nice to people. And receiving is being nice too. You know, being able to accept is a big nicety because, yeah, just that's
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the hardest part of courtesies is training yourself to do them or to receive them. Because we in America have lost, I don't know how often I have handed somebody something and they've not even said thank you, not even thought about it. Or they're just like, okay, cool, there you go. Or, you know, and for example, as a daycare teacher, just one of the things that I do in my classroom is I make a big deal out of manners. So if I'm pouring the milk in the classroom and 6 of my kids don't say anything, they just sit there and start chomping on their food. But Ezra will say thank you. I'll go into crazy rage and we're like, oh, you're so awesome. Thank you for the thank you. That was amazing. Well, then all of a sudden I get 12 thank yous. And it's because we're not trained to do it until we train ourselves to do it. And now Ezra's got this clue in my classroom. That boy loves being the first one to say thank you because he feels like he starts a chain reaction. And so he's all excited, you know. And by the end of the school year, I have some of the sweetest little kids. They'll be standing washing their hands in their bathroom, and I'll hand them the paper towel and they go, thank you, Miss Jenny. You look pretty today. Thank you. You help us out. And I'm not looking for compliments from me, but I'm training into them a mindset of manners and kindness. And I love seeing the fruit of it when they're 5 and 6 and 8 years old, and their teachers are still going, this kid has amazing manners. Because we need to realize it costs nothing, but you have to practice it and you have to do it to make it a habit. Cool. What time to think and reflect? What would you like to do to increase the courtesy in our game? What could you personally do that would increase your game's courtesy? For me, it had a lot to do with learning to accept. It just did. It had a lot to do with, my husband has his physical health issues, and I'm used to doing all the heavy lifting and stuff for him. And at events, the boys of our household, Jose and Johan and Albinus, would all be like, we're here. We can help with this. Okay. Okay, I will. Yeah, accepting had a lot of stuff I needed to do for reflecting on my game.
I think we also do need to remember like the thank yous and the pleases and stuff like that, because we are a volunteer group. And I think sometimes when we are in charge, we're the autocrat or something, and we're stressed, we tend to be more, some people can be more order oriented, like this needs to be done, and forget can you please go help me out with this, or thank you so much for doing that, or whatever. I'm not saying it happens very often. I just think that sometimes I've seen it where my co-autocrat in this case was very rude to a lot of people, and I'm putting out fires because they're so upset. So I think, I don't know. I don't know why I even went down this road. Sorry.
And I'd actually just like to comment on that really quick, Grania, because I want to just put out there that one of my favorite things about Sir Roland is his level of gratitude. He is truly grateful to his populace, and he doesn't just appear grateful, he speaks it and he makes it known, and he makes you feel valued as a barony member. And Grania did the same in her own way as the autocrat of Outlandish. She was very grateful for all the help that she got, and she didn't just keep that grateful, she showed it. And so, Mallory, I basically known you very little that we've been able to do together, but I think you've hit the nail on the head. You're going to have those moments where your gratitude is going to change the whole world for somebody who's volunteering to do things. And I think Grania had something next to say.
Well, it was along the same lines of what Mallory was saying with, and I have some experience being an extremely stressed out and afraid autocrat. Little bit. And I'm very glad to hear that it came across that way, because I was trying very hard to, every time I had to interact with somebody, take a deep breath and be extremely polite and ask, not demand. And if they said, yes, I can do that, be grateful. I joke about it, but I did actually run around with Scooby snacks because I thought they were amazing, and some of the most delicious graham crackers I've ever had in my belt pouch. And I would randomly give people who I saw helping, or who helped me, or who stepped up and volunteered, thank you, here, Scooby snacks. Which, it was a little thank you. They were amazing. It was a little thank you. It wasn't a big thing, but it also helped me as the autocrat who was frayed and frazzled, running around trying to make sure, all the fires were out. It helped me remember to lighten up, because it was something that was kind of silly. And so, and that helped. And I think, yeah, as you're saying, it's really important to show gratitude to the people who are helping, who, when they look at you, they go, let me see if she needs some help. And they come over. Or if you stand there and say, I need help, and you have 3 people come over immediately, don't just turn around and say, okay, I need you, and you, blah, blah, blah. Thank you for being willing to help. Would you please?
Right.
Would you mind? Could you handle this for me? I really appreciate it. It's important to remember. And I'm a lot like you, Lady Raelena, in that my biggest struggle, I believe, is accepting courtesies of all kinds. And it's something I am working on. It is something that we're in the same household. Our household is helping me with. It's something that my non-household SCA family is helping me with. But it's hard. It's hard to accept sometimes.
Sir Owen?
As being somebody who's been in that same position of leading an event, being an event steward, I think that we went through a phase in the SCA prior to me even joining where we had a lot of membership, particularly locally here in Alberon. And I think that the membership got very used to, a minority of the group putting on the program for the majority. And for a long time, it was like a service being rendered for a cost, right? You paid your site fee and you're going to get this program. And, it played out a lot more like a Ren Fair and less like a community coming together to do something fun. And I think that we're getting back to the notion that an event steward is a volunteer and their staff is a group of volunteers. And what's more is they're not a group of volunteers from another side of the kingdom. They're a group of volunteers from our own community. And having a little bit of mercy and having a little bit of, or remembering our courtesies goes a long way to alleviating the stress of those individuals and remembering that we're all doing our best here. And if you've got a complaint, I think it's a good practice to have a solution to go with that complaint. So if, and I think that can be a form of courtesy. So, if the Porta-Johns don't have any more toilet paper, if you came up to the event steward and said, hey, the Porta-Johns need to be stocked and I'd be happy to do that. Do you know where the extra toilet paper is way better than complaining and then just walking away or being rude about it. The thing is that this isn't a theme park.
Exactly.
Nobody's getting paid. We all need to be there for each other, very much in the same way that you kind of mentioned earlier. We got to be together on this sort of thing.
So we've literally only got 5 minutes left and we're supposed to stop as soon as this is happening. So I just wanted to leave you with this lovely picture of a little girl named Willow. And this is where it begins. We need to show it to our families and our neighbors and start small and learn how to be it from the beginning. And I really appreciate all of this conversation. It just warms my heart every time I do this class to see that I'm not alone in the desire for kindness and honor. And I know that's because I'm part of a great society. So I want to thank you all.
Thank you so much.
We are done.
Huzzah.
Thank you so much for teaching. I enjoy this class every time I get to come.
Thank you, Mallory.
Thanks for attending, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and close the class, but enjoy the rest of your time. And it was great seeing you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.